Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this Signal Hour. We are just going to be having a ripping good time today. Back here with Evie. Hey, Evie.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to be here.
So we've been having some really wild conversations lately, haven't we? It's a lot going on. So I guess before we start there, look, the Signal Hour is trying to make sense of the world, and that's what I do for my followers at Peak Prosperity and out on the interwebs. And look, it's getting harder and harder to keep track of everything. I am a very high volume opportunity. I consume pretty much vast fire hoses of stuff.
You do.
Yeah. And even with that, it's hard for me to keep up because so much is changing so quickly. But this is the model I've been anticipating for a long time because we live in an exponentially changing world for good and for bad. And with that exponential change, the pace of that just overwhelms our abilities, but you can feel it, right? Multiple fracture fronts. We have things going on in Europe and China and the US and divisions. And so today we're going to go through a lot of the what of that here. And then we'll get to the why of it in part two, which we do for subscribers. So this is turning out to be very much, and I'm just struggling a bit to get this, see if I can get this here in focus. That looks better.
Yeah, that does.
All right. So let's start here with this then today. Remember, new format. We're doing 2 episodes a week now, Wednesdays and Fridays each week.
Yep.
And it has 2 parts. It has that public part, which everybody is watching right now. And then it has a part for our premium members back at Peak Prosperity. And the conversations we've been having there have been extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Yes,
so just as a reminder about that, now this is live, so we're watching the comments like hello from Germany. Hello, Germany. There, Jason Boyd.
Hello from Chicago. Hello from Tacoma, Washington.
Yep. Hello. Hello, everyone.
We see you, even if we can't call it all out.
Now, as a quick reminder for Peak Prosperity members, you go to that link right there. Of course, it's on the front page of the site. It would have looked like this. You would click there, and you can just watch the whole thing uninterrupted as a Peak Prosperity member, part 1, part 2, by going to that link. Join the discussion. This is what we're going to be discussing in part 2 today, which was part of our conversation, Evie, around the table this morning, and is can our societal fractures be repaired, or does it end cathartically? In
such a good question,
as you might say. And by the way, we just got a comment here, Evie, from somebody back at the site, Neo, asking this. I think just the parts in yellow.
Sure. Hi, Chris. I was wondering what your thoughts are in the apparent change of direction of the Trump administration. He goes on to say, you said recently that it's either a revolution or it's not, and it's looking more and more like there's not going to be a true, meaningful revolution at all.
We have to talk about that because my model is very simple. When you are, it's not my model, it's the rules for rulers model. It's just, it's how societies work. If you're going to have a revolution, like if it's a Copernican revolution of thought, well, you put it out there, and the next thing you know, you're hiding from the church, and they want to burn you at the stake and all that because you're a heretical person. Revolutions require you to hit critical mass.
Right.
If Trump does not arrest the people who are seeking to actively destroy this country, conducted lawfare against its own citizens, did all of those damaging things, if those people, if we can't just sort of go, oh, well, let's just shrug past that. And we're more about the future, not the past. Let's look forward.
Right.
They'll come back and destroy you. These people.
Yeah, and he should know that better than anybody.
Don't you think?
Yeah, it's surprising to me that he doesn't at this point. But I mean, could it be possible that he has another plan? We just don't know what it is yet.
4D chess, 5D, I'm hopeful, but maybe not.
Like maybe he's getting ready. A friend of mine was saying this the other day. She was like, what if he's just getting all his ducks lined up? You know, it takes a while when you do put a case together. You have to have the evidence. You can't just go out there willy-nilly and arrest people. You have to have the actual,
Well, I can make this very simple. John Brennan lied to Congress. People under the Trump administration, like Steve Bannon, were put in prison for contempt of Congress. So apparently you can put people in prison for contempt or lying in front of Congress, right? Okay. John Brennan lied. He's one of the 52 signatories, former, intelligence official.
Right.
Trump did take his security clearances away, which he was very butthurt about. But that guy, I could type up his arrest warrant in an hour and I'd file it another hour. Now we're into 2 hours. Evie, they're saying, well, you have to give time. You have to give time. I forget what today is, but it's probably close to 92 or 93 days. We're almost at the 100-day mark.
Wow.
0 people have been arrested who I consider to be consequential.
Yeah, you're right.
0.
That's true.
Except Andrew Cuomo charges were just referred to the DOJ for Andrew Cuomo.
Really?
For lying to Congress. So that's a governor, but I need FBI officials, Congress critters and weasels. I need high-level HHS officials who did this whole COVID thing. We're going to talk about that today. And we have to talk about this very exciting that the White House came out with a big piece saying, oh, hey, yeah, this thing, COVID, came out of a lab, right? Great. But we have to understand that this wasn't just sort of like, oh, it came out of a lab and then, we did the best we could. None of that fog of war stuff. It was designed and created by U.S. scientists with the help of Chinese scientists, probably Canadian, probably European, doesn't matter. We designed this pathogen, then unleashed it, and then did everything we possibly could to inflict as much harm as possible on innocent people, middle-class people, etc., as a consequence of all that. It was just used as an excuse. Misinformation, censorship, lying, the jabs, lockdowns, masks on kids, totally irrational stuff. And if you don't see the totality of that pattern for what it was, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't just, we had some less than competent people. Right. No, we had highly competent people.
Yep.
Highly competent.
And information was out there.
Yeah.
We had the data pretty early on, actually. And there were a lot of doctors who got in trouble for speaking about what that truth was. So he says, we'll win a few small battles here and there, but what's going on? And we have all this warmongering going on. So we got to talk about that stuff. All right. So here's where we're going to start today. All right.
And by the way, this is territory I know a lot about for reasons. And
lab origin. Is this your specialty here?
It's one of several areas I feel like I have a little bit of extra knowledge in potentially. So this is the website. It starts with that Trump walking authoritatively, right?
I know, White House didn't believe this was real.
I know. Look at that. It looks like a movie trailer.
It does.
But this is how it started out with the origin. This is the first sentence they go with. I love this.
The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated naturally.
So that's where it started right there. So, and we'll go through the timeline very quickly, but so the story we were fed was that COVID was a novel. That's what nCoV means, right? It's novel coronavirus.
That's right.
It was novel. Novel means we haven't seen this before. Oh, actually, Dr. Ralph Barrick had been monkeying around, and he used that term accurately, with this virus since the mid-1990s, right? It was not novel. We knew a lot about this particular virus. It came through the ACE2 receptor. Like, there's a lot. We knew it was not novel, but they came out with like, oh no, look at this crazy pandemic that came out, right?
What do you know?
What do you know? So here was their first point that they made.
Wow.
Point one.
The virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature.
PRRA.
You guys know too. We've been talking, Chris, you've been talking about this for years.
Yep.
Now.
A biological characteristic. Now, this is cool. It's 2025. I'm glad we're getting there, but I want to say that I first reported on that myself May 4th, 2020. Not to toot my own horn, but this was day 102 of figuring stuff out. And I titled this one Lying Virologists. And it began here. This was an email from a lying virologist, Christian Anderson, who blocked me immediately on Twitter because, he's concerned about free speech and all that stuff. Anyway, look at this. Friday, January 31st, 2020. Remember, we don't know anything about this. What could it be? To Anthony Fauci and copying not another government official, not the FBI, not the National Security Department, not the president, but Jeremy Farrar, who is the head he's the CEO of a UK NGO that promotes pharma crap all over the world called the Wellcome Trust, right? And Welcome, not welcoming. That was actually the last name of the Brit nasty people. That's like saying,
makes sense.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, it's a robber baron moment. But look at, he says, blah, 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 blah. In yellow, the unusual features. So what we're talking about, a biological characteristic. What does it possess? An unusual feature of the virus. It makes up a really small part of the genome, just less than 0.1%. Yeah, 4 letters, PRRA.
Yeah, right.
Right? So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some of the features potentially look engineered. That's what he said. And this jumped out at me and everybody else who's looking at it at the time as just, this is a smoking gun. It's not 0.1%. That's like saying, well, we've weighed Chris and he weighs, 190 pounds, but 0.1% of him is not quite right. Yeah, that's called the bullet in my head, right? It's like some things, like you can't, like the weight of it or the length of it is just like the totally irrelevant measure. It's very small. It's this 0.1%. It just is the furin cleavage site that gives it 100% its pathogenicity and its ability to infect humans. It's
in
power.
Our bodies. Yeah.
And it was a feature that was engineered into this virus. And it's completely obvious that was the case at the time. And he says, Eddie, these are all like first name chummy Mean Girls Club virologists. Eddie, Bob, Mike, and myself all find the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. Okay, that's January 31st, 2020. A genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, which is scientific way of saying, dude, this thing totally came from the lab. That's science speak for, we made this. Someone did. I mean, we humans.
Probably is. And by the way, I just want to say, if you're listening here today on YouTube or from Twitter, YouTube likes to shadow ban us. I don't know about Twitter, but please, if you are listening to this and you find it helpful, hit the like button and the subscribe button to help support getting this information out there. You've been clobbered by the algorithms in the past several years and even given strikes for trying to bring the truth to light. So it's really important that we get this out to as many people as we can, because there are a lot of individuals now that are looking back at this and have been severely harmed either by the virus itself and long COVID or those other things.
Well, think about so
that were mandated,
like 9/11. This self-goal manufactured crisis was used as a reason to stomp all over our constitutional rights and really traumatize people and steal lots and lots of money from people and funnel money to insiders. The people who made those tests that were totally just gave false positives and were totally stupid, they made bank, right? We funneled over $100 billion of profits to Pfizer to manufacture the crap in response to this. At any rate, it was a looting operation, but one that was very deadly. And I think that we should look at it as a fractal representation, because as bad and as large as it is, the whole COVID response, it's just a little piece of the overall rot that's happening in the system. But if we can't get our heads around this, so that's why I'm so dismissive. Evie, you and I, we go to Northampton. There's all these people. Elon's terrible. We hate Elon. He's stealing my right to vote. I'm like, what? But with that, it's like, how can you be this angry over something that hasn't happened when the people who destroyed and upended your lives, you have no, like, there's blank, they're like blank about that.
How can that? Yeah, we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Yesterday, last week, on our Signal Hour, it was the second part. Things got really emotional. Here, and our tribe actually weighed in. A lot of people.
Well, because of the damage done.
And there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of grief and sadness. And when you really look at that big picture you're talking about, it tells a very different story about where we are and where we're headed, which is different than what we're being told by mainstream media and influencers and whatever's going on out there in the secular world.
No, you can't. My view is until you cough up these national hairballs, right? The JFK murders one, MLK, RFK murders are others, the Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, on and on. There are a lot of these things where when you sort of scratch at them even slightly, you go, oh, the official story is crap.
Mm,
Now, I don't know what the truth is, but I can tell you the story, the narrative that we're living with is wrong.
right. Just incorrect.
Objectively wrong. The science is bad. I don't say this as somebody who sort of guesses at motivations. I'm telling you, for each one of those things I mentioned, I have discrete data that says, oh, no, that story is wrong. Right. So it's like with this case where they're like, oh, yeah, there's this thing that potentially looks engineered. No, duh. This was completely obviously something. And this was the smoking gun for me. So this is Saturday, February 1st. So this is just a little bit later. In fact, if you look, this came out at 10:32 p.m. on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
So by Saturday at 12:29, which is just 29 minutes over the morning goal line there. So this is,
Right.
you could call that late at night Friday if you think that way. You have Anthony Fauci saying to Hugh Auchincloss, whose son actually happens to be a congressman who I just beat on all the time because he's like, we have to return our country to morals. I mean, oh, you mean the morals that like where your dad covered up like mass murder of the world?
Right.
That kind of morals?
Yeah. What is he saying here? He says, it is essential that we speak this AM. Keep your cell phone on. I have a conference call at 7:45 with Azar. It will likely be over at 8:45. Read this paper as well as the email that I will forward to you now. You will have tasks today that must be done.
So, oh my gosh, there's a
ominous.
giant emergency. There's this novel coronavirus. It's a pandemic. Nobody knows what's coming. Hey, Hugh, I'm going to need you to help me conduct a cover up right away because look at the attachments. Barrick and Shi et al. In Nature Medicine. It's a 2015 paper which clearly describes performing gain of function research on SARS, and it's out in Nature Medicine. It's out there, and they're like, oh shit, we funded this.
Right.
How do we cover this up? Like, not how do we save people's lives? How do we communicate effectively about the importance of vitamin D? What do we know about this?
Prevent a huge amount of deaths.
First things first, dude.
Cover
important. You have tasks today that must be done. All right. But concerns started to mount. So on February 2nd, this is from Jeremy Farrar, who is again the odious head of that Wellcome Trust. And this is going Sunday. This is at 11:28 in the morning to Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, the folky guitar playing,
Yeah. He says,
and Lawrence Tabak, that's the right-hand man of Collins. So I'm just saying, but note again, this is Jeremy Farrar sending stuff to the highest levels of NIH, NIAID. Nobody else in the government is being wrapped into this. Not the FBI,
right.
Not the NSC.
Well, do we know if anybody's redacted that's important in those portions?
Oh, no, B6 is those actually probably ought to be B4s. That's the actual email itself.
Oh, okay.
That's all that's redacted, and that's those parts.
Okay. So I guess this is regarding a teleconference. And Jeremy writes to Anthony Fauci, Tedros and Bernard have apparently gone into conclave. They need to decide today, in my view. If they do prevaricate, I would appreciate a call with you later tonight or tomorrow to think how we might take forward. Meanwhile, ...
Well, this is the Zero Hedge article, and if you look at that,
wow.
Coronavirus contains HIV insertion, stoking fears over artificially created bioweapon. Zero Hedge made the attention of the top end.
That's right. They nailed that.
Of this, and they worked hard to then crush Zero Hedge, and Zero Hedge got actually deleted from Twitter.
I remember
a day or two after this.
I remember
this is how that worked. Like, not, hey, let's explain why those 4 inserts that you see from literally HIV, parts of it were taken out from the GP120 protein that allows it to dock into things like your white blood cells, which is why HIV is an acquired immunodeficiency virus, because it attacks your white blood cells in your immune system. By attacking the white blood cells, you have an immune deficiency problem, and that's very bad, as we know, right? So somebody took pieces of the GP120 docking protein and put it into this spike protein, because why not? We're just trying stuff out, see what works. And that's why, anyway, so the concern was not, how do we begin to explain this to the American people? It's, can we get Zero Hedge banned? Let's call up our friends at CISA. Hey, can we get a ban?
Right.
Call up Jack
Call
Dorsey.
Google.
Get Meta on the phone line. We're going to need, and then later they said, there's, there are vaccine injury support groups popping up on Facebook. Hey, Mark Zuckerberg, can you just put a bullet in those?
Yep.
Disband those, shut those down?
How many got shut down? People were trying to talk about what was happening to them and their experience of COVID or later on their experience of the vaccines, and it just wasn't allowed.
All right.
Wow.
So here's the timeline I want to go with, though.
Okay.
January 31st, they're like, dude, this thing looks engineered. February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I got a bunch of other emails. This whole time, there's just emails flying around, and they're like, this looks bad. We have to decide what we're going to do. You know what they decided to do? 8 days later, on February 9th, 2020, in February of 2020,
published.
That was 9 edits, sorry. But on February of 2020, they published this draft version of this thing called the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. And look who the authors are.
Christian Anderson.
Yep.
Andrew Rambeau.
Yep.
Ian Lipkin.
Yep.
Edward Holmes. Robert Gary.
Okay.
And the Department of Immunology and Microbiology.
Yeah, but see down there?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the people who are on that those email chains from before. You see all those names?
Oh, yeah.
So all the names that are in these meetings where they're like, oh, no. And then 8 days later, they come up with this manuscript called The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2. And then it's printed on March 17th, and it's in Nature Medicine. And what's that say down in yellow? What's that say down there?
It says, our analyses clearly show that SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct or a purposefully manipulated virus.
Whoa. How do we go from...
that?
Dude, this thing totally looks like a lab. 8 days later, they're like, clearly shows. Our analyses clearly show.
Yeah. Right.
And then, so I go to the supplemental tables and they put this part. Let me get my little laser pointer thing. They put this table in which shows human SARS-CoV-2 has this furin cleavage site, this PRRA site right here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nothing else has it. No other coronaviruses in the near lineage have it. None of them.
Nothing in nature.
Not our rat TG13, no pangolin viruses, nothing. Like, nope. It just sort of showed up.
How strange.
How strange.
How strange.
How strange.
What a coincidence.
So this is just very quickly the timeline here, but
sure.
But just, and people can read that, but I mean, just skip through it. But this is just to lay out what just happened here.
So Christian Anderson sends an email to Fauci on Friday, and then Fauci sends an email to, how do you say that?
Q Auchincloss. I think you have to say it with like a little spit. Auchincloss.
Good, I have a cold.
Yeah.
Actually.
There we go.
Emails fly around from 1 p.m. to 2 on Saturday, February 1st, 2021. Lots of people copied in from the Wellcome Trust, NIH, WHO, and friendly viral researchers. And then they have a con call at 2 p.m., which lasts for about an hour. And they presumably stay on afterwards to discuss something. And then 8 days later, they have this huge manuscript that they publish proving natural origin.
Right. So that's what they went with. They went with this thing. Oh, it's natural. Now imagine, if you will, a parallel universe timeline where they go, okay, look, we were doing some experiments, seems to have escaped the lab. It's our worst nightmare.
We're so sorry.
We're a little bit up to our eyeballs in this because USAID has been funding this research, NIAID, NIH, State Department, all have been DOD. We've all been funding this research, and we got this guy, Ralph Barrick, down there who knows more about this virus than anybody. So I'll tell you what, we'll just tell the American people, look, this thing came out of a lab. And we can assign blame later, but for now, we just need to understand this was specifically engineered. And by the way, it didn't come with one rattly key that gets into one human lock. It came equipped with 4 high-quality keys to get into human cells, and so it's going to cause a lot of damage. As a consequence, we're going to have to treat this very differently. We're open to all ideas. We're calling upon the medical community to observe what works, feed that back in. Oh, look, hydroxychloroquine works. Oh, ivermectin works. Oh, people with high vitamin D levels aren't dying.
Right. Here's a website where we collect all that data that these good physicians are finding is helpful and works.
Yep. Oh, hey, look, there are these people out there like Chris Martenson who are figuring this out and helping to communicate this, right? I'm very proud of all the emails and reflections I get back from people who say, thank you. You kept me sane. I understood what was happening. I avoided the jab as a consequence. I knew to take this stuff. I mean,
Right.
it was legitimately helpful. The whole entirety of our government was arranged to destroy any honest inquiry into this. That's what that was.
That's right. That was powerful. I think you could say that again.
Well, so and then they had a second bullet point. Oops.
The data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events.
Yeah, that means that it just came into one human and then boom, it went everywhere. That's not how these things work. Spillovers are it's tuned for a bat or something else, right? And then for it to get into humans, it's a rattly key. You have to, sometimes the lock works, sometimes it's rattly. So you have these multiple sort of spillovers for a while. It takes a while. And then
finally,
this thing
it jumps.
Just came right out.
Wow.
Okay. So in 2022, episode 50, I had this thing, lying media and the lies they tell. And I like to point this out because I'm still so bitterly angry at the New York Times for being a bunch of retards. And here, Carl Zimmer, head retard, and Benjamin Mueller, sub-retard, for the New York Times. They are the science writers. And they said, oh, look, new research points to Wuhan wet market as pandemic origin. I put the wet in there, but that's what they talked about it. And they're like, oh, look, it sounds so authoritative. Remember this stuff?
Yeah, I do. Scientists released a pair of extensive studies over the weekend that point to a large food and live animal market in Wuhan, China, as the origin of the coronavirus pandemic.
2 of them. It's not one. They go 1, 2. It's 2 studies. Extensive, and they refer to each other.
Analyzing a wide range of data, blah, 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 of all these things, the scientists concluded that the coronavirus was very likely present in live mammals sold at the Hunan seafood wholesale market in late 2019 and suggested that the virus spilled over into people working or shopping there on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah. Concluded. They very likely, it was very likely present in live mammals. That's what they concluded. They concluded that. By the way, they didn't provide any genetic data whatsoever in this paper, right?
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And look, the studies.
The studies.
Over 150 pages. That's how you know it's good quality stuff. Look at that.
There it is.
140, we wouldn't take it, but 150.
The studies, which together span 150 pages, are a significant salvo in the debate over the beginnings of a pandemic that has killed nearly 6 million people across the world. The question of whether the outbreak began with a spillover from wildlife sold at the market, blah, 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 or some other event has given rise to pitched debates over how to best stop the next pandemic.
Yeah, don't do this. don't release it from a lab next time.
When you look at all the evidence together, it's an extraordinarily clear picture that the pandemic started at the Hunan market, said Michael Warraby, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Arizona and a co-author of both new studies.
Michael Warraby, he's from Australia, actually. He's an Australian. He is at the University of Arizona. And by the way, let's just back up real quick. He's
on there?
He's not on this one, but he's on almost all the other stuff that's out there.
Yep.
Anyway, he's just one of these lying virologists. He's just a cad, just awful.
Wow.
And there was another study that came out, this is the other one. And again, it has all these same characters. You see Warraby on there right after Christian Anderson on the bottom.
Right.
But these are the names. If you ever want to know who's responsible for all of this stupidity and trying to cover it up, here's your snapshot. Right. Those are the peeps.
Or if another one happens, these are the people you look at first.
Right there. I go to these people first. And so here we get into point number 3.
Point 3. Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, which is gene altering an organism supercharging at inadequate biosafety levels.
Okay, I have so much data on this, but we don't need my data. We're going to turn now to foremost expert John Stewart.
I think we owe a great debt of gratitude to science. Science has, in many ways, helped ease the suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science.
Mr. Vaccine is like all nervous here for a second. He's like, I gotta take a drink here.
Listen.
It's coffee. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to you.
I'm
so
all
what
for
do you?
takes,
But what do you mean by? Do you mean like perhaps there's a chance that this was created in a lab? There's an investigation.
A chance?
Well, oh
my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think? And then they ask the scientists, they're like, how did this? So wait a minute, you work at the Wuhan respiratory coronavirus lab. How did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle. And you're like, no, the name of your lab. If you look at the name, let me see your business card. Show me your business card. Oh, I work at the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey and then it sneezed into my chili and now we all have coronavirus. Like, come on. Okay.
Wait a second.
What about this? Listen to this.
Wait a second.
All right, John. Oh my God.
Colbert, he's just dying.
Oh my God. There's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe a steam shovel made it with a cocoa bean. Or it's the chocolate factory. Maybe that's it.
That could be. That could be.
All right, I think that covers it right there.
Didn't he get he got some crap for that, didn't he?
Yeah, of course he did. But this is in 2021. June 15, 2021, Jon Stewart gets it. I mean, it's just completely obvious. The fact that I'm glad the White House has a website now saying, hey, looks like some chocolatey goodness broke out in Hershey, but
I know.
But it's just stupid that it took this much time to even get there. Like we were going nowhere under Biden. And I don't know that we're going to go anywhere necessarily under Trump, but people need to be arrested for this. And I think in some cases executed for crimes against humanity. There's certain things that are just so bad.
That's true.
That you're like irredeemable. And we have to send a message to other people who might be thinking about doing this. Because there's a whole lot of virologists out there who need to get the message. They need to be going, yeah, I could start a lawn service, or I could accidentally contribute to the next pandemic and be, hung from a yardarm.
No, I think that's true. If we're not having any consequences, then we're not sending a very clear message to people that are going to try and do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't want gain of function research to be going on all over the world in various places where the biosecurity is sketchy. And
it shouldn't be going on at all.
I mean, I don't know why we really need it at this point. Like, we seem to have conquered most of the major diseases, according to science, right? And could we just focus on cancer research and Alzheimer's and other things that really mess with people? Like, who cares about a freaking coronavirus?
Yeah.
A cold virus. No, it's unpleasant.
Well, this is a big deal. They gave us the website. They dropped this, Evie. They're giving us they're laying it out. They're giving us a path to follow here.
Okay. So point 4, Wuhan Institute of Virology, or the WIV, researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market.
True. And that connects to this one, which was that actually there's no evidence to support the proximal origin tale. None. Zero. Literally zero.
By nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it hasn't.
Well, it hasn't. And let me just point out this one piece of data here, which came, this is in the New York Post. You can see down at the bottom, it's in May of 2021. Mm-hmm. And they report that tests of 80,000 animal samples in the first infected areas of China all came back negative for COVID-19. 80,000. They were trying so hard to find an animal, any animal. Like, is this in a centipede? Anything.
Wow,
And they
80,000.
80,000. They found
That's a
zero,
lot.
zero, right? Zero. And then after that, remember that New York Times article came out in 2022. And Warraby is like, oh, yes, we've concluded beyond a shadow of doubt came from raccoon dogs in a wet market, but we have no genetic data and we have no samples to show that. Zero. There's zero evidence.
Just
And then you have all
speculation.
these people. You have to defend the science. They stand on the roadside. The science. I believe in the science. This isn't science. This is absolute crap. And these people are monsters. And they did this on purpose. And then they got covered up for by our whole system, which includes the media, our intelligence agencies, so-called, our government. And then you have all these useless politicians, just sort of like dancing around pretending what's going on. It's terrible. Terrible. And all of that came from this big, giant subcommittee report on that. Okay.
The lessons learned and a path forward.
Yeah. Well, it's by the way, one of their lessons is, the vaccine, as we all know, has saved millions of lives. So they had to throw in their little liturgy,
Yeah. Somebody on here was
catechism
asking
call.
how long before they release the vaccine, like the true, how many years do we have to wait for the vaccine data to really come back to us, the truth.
Yep.
And
but by the way, no, that's a hard no on this one. It was not the bird flu. We have tons of scientific data. We don't need random conjecture to get through this story. Evie, can I do a shameless plug?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. First up, the fat pipe is a thing I do a couple times a week, and it's just where I'm sort of gathering things. This one came out 2 days ago because today's April 23rd. Came out on the 21st. You can see 749 hearts, 118 comments. That's what I'm going to direct your attention to. What I do is I gather data like I'm gathering right now, put it together, and then as a community, we talk about it. That's not just 100
differently.
Yeah,
right?
that's not 118 people putting an emoji down there. These are big, fat, meaty comments in many cases, right? So great conversations happening around that. That's a premium service for our subscribers as well. We have Dave Fairtex's weekly market and news wrap up. It's fantastic. People love that, especially people who are in the markets, but he does a lot more than that. He talks about how he sees the world in the news gatherings, and it's all links and everything. So it's great. So everybody who needs more context, and we all do, to understand this world, it's a critical offering. But then we do have part 2 of the Signal Hour, which we're coming to at the end of this hour. We'll continue on for our subscribers. And this was last week's, right? Which was about, we talked about vaccine injuries in that one. And we were able to go pretty deep. And I think you even got emotional and cried during that one because we started to add up that these aren't, we accidentally goofed and we pushed something stupid out there. Like, this was a deliberate program of harm.
It was.
By callous people, and confronting that is difficult, right?
It is. It hit me for some reason all of a sudden that, what we've done to ourselves and our children is just unforgivable on some level. And we've all been the victims of it in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And it just, it hurt my heart, and I couldn't help it. Yeah, and it sparked a lot of great conversations. This particular premium.
Oh my God, yes.
This part 2.
Great. Really good. Really good. But that's who we are. We have to process all this together. Okay. Can we talk about our constitutional crisis? Remember, this is
yours or mine.
This is the possessive our that's being used. Remember, our democracy. Well, now these same people are worried about our Constitution. You have to use that our in the possessive sense, not the collective sense. It's not ours. It's our. Right?
Could you just scroll down to the bottom of the comments? Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's start here. It's just super important to defend our Constitution.
Great.
And remember last time we talked about, like, there's Abrego Garcia, right? There, or what's it? Abrego, I think Garcia. Anyway, the MS-13 wife beating, human trafficking, here illegally migrant who was deported, shipped back to El Salvador.
El Salvador, yep.
Yeah. Anyway, it turns out, and we talked about, it was Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland who went down to help secure his release and signal his amazingness. Has been now followed up by this gentleman.
Great. Congressman Robert Garcia. This was, I guess, about a day ago. He says, "We just returned from El Salvador and demanded that Donald Trump follow the 9-0 Supreme Court decision to return Kilmar home. We must fight for due process and the Constitution."
Well, obviously, he's very concerned about the rights of, well, actually, the Constitution applies to U.S. citizens. So I'm not really clear what Constitution he's worried about.
He's trying to apply the U.S. Constitution to somebody that's not a U.S. citizen.
But
Is
now
that
he's very concerned about the Constitution, very concerned. And of course, he has a long track record. No, he doesn't.
Oh, okay. Let's see. He was mayor of Long Beach, California. He led efforts that resulted in the city being recognized as a national model for its COVID-19 response, including achieving a 99% vaccination rate amongst seniors and teachers. He emphasized science-based approaches and
6 feet
ensured
apart.
access to tests and vaccines for low-income communities. He opposed a bill on the House floor that would remove vaccine requirements for nurses and medical workers in hospitals, arguing that such requirements protect vulnerable populations.
Oh, there's that constitutional thing. Oh, yeah, no. We need vaccine requirements for nurses and medical workers because that protects vulnerable populations, which, as we know, are more important when you're talking about our Constitution. Our Constitution protects the vulnerable, not everybody. Not nurses and medical workers and all of that stuff. He said nothing. He cared nothing. Garcia cared nothing about the Constitution when it came to American citizens. But he apparently cares a lot when it comes to illegal migrants.
Go figure.
Go figure.
Last, during a select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic hearing, Garcia highlighted the negative consequences of vaccine hesitancy, noting higher COVID-19 rates in Republican-led states and areas with lower vaccination rates. He criticized misinformation that undermined vaccine confidence.
We need confidence. As you know, it works better if we all believe in it.
It does work better.
Yeah,
mine works better if you have yours.
Well, yours doesn't work at all unless I have mine. Because we both have to believe, right? It's stupid, right? So again, he cared nothing about rights. He cared nothing about individual rights, not the Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, none of that stuff. Didn't care. Actually working actively against it. So I just want to point out that for people like Congressman Garcia, our Constitution is actually not constitutional at all. It's highly anti-American and it's anti-life and it's also anti-science. These are anti-science positions that he was holding right here. Felt like he was in the center of it though. So it's virtue signaling. Evie, this is an important thing. He feels like he's,
relevant.
Well, he's saying the catechisms and liturgy that show
right
that he's a member in good standing of the bait ball he happens to inhabit that's swimming around, hoping the sharks don't eat them all or whatever the bait ball people are up to.
I know.
But it's not scientific. It's not logical. It's not rational. And I have my concerns that we've slipped into a type of irrationality. This is what we're going to really dive into in part 2. I'm not sure that these people can come back from this position they're in. I think it's a one-way trip. And we've talked about Helen Joyce and with parents of transgender children not able to reconcile in their own minds. They may have harmed permanently the reproductive and life cycle of their children. It's very difficult psychologically to come back from. I'm not sure how you come back from this.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I stand for science and the rule of law.
And he's being, I'm sure he's getting all sorts of rewards for this way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just reinforcing that he's doing the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah. And he probably believes he is.
What
you got?
Next, Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari says from Arizona.
I'm in El Salvador to shine.
No, make sure you get that first line up top.
We
we
are in a constitutional crisis. I am in El Salvador to shine a light on Kilmar's story and keep the pressure on Donald Trump to secure his safe return home.
Wouldn't it have been nice if these people had this much energy for protecting the rights of citizens from
during
COVID? Remember, we had these random lockdowns. The health authority of LA County could say, your store closes, your restaurant's closed. Right. We'll keep that one open.
Liquor store open.
Open, essential.
Gas station open.
McDonald's
open.
Little cafe
closed.
Closed.
Yeah.
Right. It was completely 100% not following any sort of law, rule of law, rationality, science, anything. It was a complete and utter escape from reality. It was delusional. It was pure fiction. And now she wants to carry on the fiction. Hi, everyone. We're here. We are in our constitutional crisis. So I'm glad you're having a constitutional crisis finally, but it's over the wrong thing. What a dummy. What a dummy.
We're not going to get to hear it, I thought.
No, it's really not. I don't want to subject it. Nobody needs that. Okay. But I went to Grok and I said, Grok, hey.
All right.
You can divine the question I asked it from the answer.
All right. Let's see what the question was. There is no evidence in the provided references or public records that Congresswoman Yasemin Ansari, a Democrat, objected to the constitutionality of lockdowns or vaccine mandates. Instead, her record indicates support for public health measures during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
All
Instead,
right, so
okay.
No constitutional stance.
No, so obviously, obviously. Now we get to hear from the governor of our state, and this one also is going to be hard to take for me.
So when you see Senator Van Hollen going over to El Salvador to try to get one of his constituents out of their, gang jail there, he was exported or deported with no due process. This administration says, too bad, it was an administrative error, but we're not getting him back. This constitutional crisis that we were told would happen when the administration, if it did, challenge or refuse a Supreme Court or higher court order. It's here now, right?
It's really quite unbelievable where we find ourselves. And just so folks understand, my background, I was Attorney General. In fact, I served alongside Pam Bondi for a time as the Attorney General here in Massachusetts. What we're seeing is something we've never seen before in this country. The weaponization of the Department of Justice, the launching of...
So we've never seen the weaponization of the Department of Justice before? Well, not in our America. There were over 400 people charged under Biden's administration with weaponization. I mean, obviously they weaponized
January 6th.
January 6th, the election stuff, anything else they wanted to do. They even weaponized it against Eric Adams of New York City because he questioned sending all these migrants into his city and bankrupting the city. He just questioned it. And next thing you knew, the Department of Justice was filing charges against him, which they had to drop lately, right?
That's true.
But listen to her. We've never seen weaponization of this before. This is brand new. We've never seen anything like this because I have the memory of a goldfish.
I know. She must.
Completely false investigations under false pretenses.
First time that's ever happened.
The refusal to comply with the rule of law, the refusal now to comply with orders from the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, you remember when Trump? This was awful. He absolutely refused to follow the laws of the Supreme Court when he gave student loan relief to all these people. Oh no, wait, that was Biden. Yeah, I got that wrong.
We've not seen a president of this country ever do this. And we're on the eve of celebrating 250 years of this great American experiment here right this weekend in Massachusetts, in fact. Never in the course of history has a president so refused to comply with the rule of law.
The rule of law.
The rule of law.
Right.
Anyway, it goes on from there.
Projection.
No, they speak in absolute terms, right? So that's how, you know this from doing psychology work, right? Inner work, that when somebody says never or always, they're not operating from a defensible position, are they?
No, they're not operating from logic. They're operating from in some cases, wildly triggered emotional place.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's disappointing. I didn't think Governor Healy was anybody that I really respected and admired anyway, but
no, it's just, listen, we're at this stage of this story where none of this is logical anymore. It's not rational. We're really going to dive into this in part 2 for subscribers. And by the way, if you aren't one, you really should consider becoming one, because we're going to frame this up and do a lot of thinking around it. It's really important to understand because this is who they are. Remember, the most important thing to remember is Maya Angelou saying, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So she's clearly saying here, I'm going to have this entirely partisan selective memory of history, no nuance, black or white, this team or that team. And by the way, this is all rats in a cage behavior, right? This is designed to be inflammatory and divisive and break us up. And so at a higher level above this, we should ask, who is doing this to us because they are breaking us apart? There are people who are like, oh, that's crazy. And other people are like, I totally see it that way. And we're really far apart. There's no nuance. And by the way, we might notice that it's gotten really bad since the jab. I don't know if that's contributing to this or not. With like, actually, remember, brain fog is a legitimate
That's true.
symptom of being vax injured, right?
How could it affect your whole body and not your brain and
Well,
your personality?
Brain fog means your brain is affected anyway, but it does.
Your decision making and
yeah,
all those processes.
It's a hypothesis
Good
we're going to have
question.
to figure out here. All right. Anyway,
So-
I can't listen to any more of that. But now, Evie, I think it's time to go for my favorite thing, roast of the week.
Oh yeah, I love this. Let's
Okay,
go.
time for roast of the week. We're going to Harvard today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take us there.
Well, look at this. Harvard University is suing President Trump's administration for threatening to withhold public money if the school did not comply with its list of demands.
Oh boy.
So first thing we have to ask, obviously, Harvard files this ruling is, well, did they plagiarize it?
All right.
Remember,
Yeah.
their president, Claudine Gay, plagiarized,
I
and
remember.
Harvard said, oh, well, we're going to have to let her retire with a $900,000 salary, which my public money would be then going towards, I assume. And they refused to denounce plagiarism because, checkmate, it's a black woman whose last name is Gay. Can't do
Too
it.
bad for
What
you.
do we do? Well, we're going to have to defend plagiarism as an institution of higher learning. When you are not denouncing plagiarism as Harvard, you have lost the plot line entirely.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. That's just embarrassing right there.
Yeah, that's like mechanics for sand in the transmission, right?
Like third graders know not to do this. Like this is just
Well, I hope so, but we've lost the thread, right?
we have.
All right, roast of the
Wow.
week. They deserve roasting because it just goes on, right?
All right. Newsflash. A federal judge has determined that Harvard Medical School professor Deepak Panigrafi plagiarized a report submitted to the court.
To the court.
What? Harvard's plagiarism crisis is spinning out of control.
Okay, I'm just cherry picking. No, I'm not. It goes on and on and on and on
Really?
and on and on. It
Really?
just-
More?
Tons of it.
Top Harvard Medical School neuroscientist Khalid Shah allegedly falsified data and plagiarized images across 21 papers.
On
Data
and on
manipulation
and
expert
on,
Elizabeth Bick said.
on and
Holy
on.
moly, I didn't know it
and
was this bad.
on. Yeah. So they have a plagiarism
Wow.
pandemic, which is why when I wanted to roast them, first question you got to ask is, did you plagiarize
Was it
your filing?
plagiarized?
I think somebody should run their filing through some sort of a plagiarism tool and just I'm just saying, playing the odds would not surprise us at this point in time. No, but they've completely lost the plot line. Harvard University is
Wow.
I honestly don't think you should spend money to send your child there. I just don't. I think it's totally lost the plot line. If you spend
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it.
$500,000 or whatever it costs now to send your kid there, you're gonna have to spend $500,000 unprogramming them for whatever junk they come back with.
That's
I
right.
think.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's such an interesting place to be right now, right? Like having kids that are college age or thereabouts. Like, would you send your children to any secondary schools at this point?
Mm,
Would you pay for them to go to school?
mostly not unless it was STEM or a trade school.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But all right. So we're gonna have to we're gonna run a little longer than an hour today because I said I was gonna talk about this, so now I have to. The EU's frictionless slide towards war. Let's go there
Oh,
real quick.
boy.
By the way, the EU is kind of synonymous, I think, with the WEF, right, Evie?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Just so you know, Klaus Schwab,
He resigned, right?
he resigned. He resigned, and now there's some scandal. He might have sexually something. Who the hell knows? But
Oh,
you know,
gross.
whatever. But they brought in this guy is the new head.
Mr. Conjunctivitis. Wait, what? going
No,
on
I
with
think
him?
he's healing nicely from his initiation into the Black Eye Club because
Oh no.
he got a hematoma in the left eye.
I hope not.
I
Oh,
think.
gross. Or maybe it's from drinking Nestle products. Those
Maybe.
are pretty bad for you too. Meet Peter Brebeck-Letmath. How do you say that? Letmath.
Letmath, maybe.
Former CEO of Nestle, who famously stated in 2017, humans have no right to access free water.
Ding.
What? Okay.
Meet the new guy.
Great.
And
Same as the old one.
And by the way, why did I say the Black Eye Club? Because it's just mysterious. There's a Black Eye Club.
Yeah.
You know, the question's always asked, who is punching them? And I say, I don't know, but he's a righty, because you can see it's always the left eye, you know? But more importantly, and it just goes on and on. You can find tons of these people, right? You got Prince Philip, you got the Pope, you got right? It's a righty. All I know is that these people, a lot of these are actors and actresses too, right? And they display it prominently, right? No makeup, no sunglasses, right? They're not trying to minimize it. They are showing it. They're signaling it.
That's true.
Normally, you get a black eye or a facial sort of a thing. You either hide until if you're a celebrity, you hide until it's sort of gone, or you cover it up with makeup, or you wear big sunglasses or something.
Right.
Nope. Look, everybody. You know?
Could it be from plastic surgery gone awry?
No.
I mean, a lot of these people are definitely vain, and I would say
look at that: John Kerry, George Bush, Harry Reid, Prince Philip, right?
Adam Sandler.
The Pope.
It is kind of weird.
Right.
It's
all right.
a rabbit hole.
Anyway,
it's gross.
So the EU is shot through with this kind of junk right now. They have many prominent members of the Black Eye Club. So do we. But
all right.
I think you know, when you look at the Venn diagram overlap here, Evie, what you see is that China is leading in drones and advanced batteries and 5G, and we lead in big tech and advanced physics and biotech and pharma, and contested in the middle, China and US duking it out over chips and advanced manufacturing, next generation and AI. Meanwhile, the EU is leading in regulation.
Yay, EU. I'm so happy you're doing something well, I guess.
They are awesome. They're so bent. I could do a whole episode just on the EU, and they are committing energy suicide, whole other story, but they might get to the suicide part faster, particularly if we go to this part here. This is just today, Marco Rubio saying this about peace talks that were being held in London.
Figure out very soon, and I'm talking about a matter of days, not a matter of weeks, whether or not this is the war that can be ended. If it can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done. You know, we'll do what we can on the margins. We'll be ready to help whenever you're ready to have peace. But we're not going to continue with this endeavor for weeks and months on end. So we need to determine very quickly now, and I'm talking about a matter of days, whether or not this is doable in over the next few weeks. If it is, we're in. If it's not, then we have other priorities to focus on as well.
Oh! And he clearly said, if there's anything, if you go the other way, and you want us to help contribute to peace, maybe we could talk further. But this is him backing up out of NATO, saying, look, dudes and dudettes of Europe, if you insist on going to war, we got other things to worry about over here. So this is backing off, right?
That's actually inspiring. I'm glad for that.
Me too. I'm extremely happy about that. So that's interesting. If this war cannot be ended, then we're done. You're on your own, Europe.
The peace talks are going badly. Ukraine war, London peace talks downgraded as Kiev rejects U.S. plan to recognize Crimea as Russian. Neither the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy or U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will now attend the summit as had previously been planned.
Ooh, so once you have the UK and U.S. Secretaries of State bailing, that summit is now hobbled. And this whole idea that Kiev is going to reject the U.S. plan to recognize Crimea as Russian. Crimea was Russian as recently as 1954. Khrushchev, in a drunken whatever, sort of gave it over, but they're all Russian speaking, and they're not getting it back. Not only have they lost Crimea, they've also lost most of the eastern provinces of Donbass and all that. It's gone. That's just reality. So Kiev is saying, we reject reality. And the U.S. is like, oh no, this is going to go bad, right? This is about to go bad.
Gosh.
And then it leads to, what was that?
Wasn't there a whole bunch of stuff that just came out too about how they couldn't, when the and I don't know if this was true or not, but it was showing the kickbacks that everybody got from the Ukraine war.
Yeah, I don't know how much to trust those. I can't source that.
Yeah, I was
You get
curious
these
about
lists
that.
with 62 million and 58. I've never seen a source for those lists, so I'm suspicious.
Yeah, but they haven't been able to account properly for the funds that we've given them. I think at the very least.
But that is the point of war. Monies
Wink,
disappear
wink.
into them. And speaking of money, there's going to be a lot more money because Germany has now declared with this guy. This guy is just dripping testosterone. No, he's not. No, he's not.
Nope.
Whatever it takes, says Friedrich Merz.
Oh, goodness. What does he got to say? Nothing.
I'm
good?
not playing it.
You're not playing
I'm
it?
not playing it. There's a link down there for anybody who wants to listen. It's in German, but whatever. It's
Okay.
not worth it. But
It's not worth
it
it.
says Europe's entering a wartime economy. Yeah, wartime economy.
This is to prevent escalation.
That's how you prevent escalation. You get a lot of guns
You
pointed at
dummy.
each other. You
to
dummies.
ensure nobody will be dumb enough to question our power ever again.
Right?
Peace through strength.
And-
Okay.
And then you get that was I believe March 7th, March 8th, you got this going on.
When Trump tries to make peace, Europe tries to start World War III? President of the EU Parliament, Robert Metsola. Roberta Metsola says Ukraine is fighting for Europe and Europe needs to be hand in hand, lockstep with whoever is fighting for our security and values.
Ooh, our security.
There
and
it is.
Our values. Because let's be clear about that. Ukraine's values include no elections, an autocratic dictator, no freedom of assembly, no freedom of speech, right? No freedom for even to practice religion. Yeah.
That's right.
Those reflect our security and our values. That's what she's saying.
Huh? You're right.
They're fighting for our values. Oh, it's so brain dead. It's so brain dead. But if we want to get really cray, there's nobody I think worse than, and by the way, I'm starting to get a bad taste about white liberal women.
You'd said that before.
I've said
How you
that.
doing with that?
I'm not doing good because I listen to these people. I'm just like, this is unhinged. This is unhinged. So listen to, this is the main person, Callas, right? Who is one of the main diplomats out of the EU for this whole thing. Listen up to what she's very excitedly talking about.
Russia's defeat is not a bad thing because then, there could be.
Russia's defeat is not a bad thing. So already she's jumping to Russia's defeat. So this is good for peace talks. You want people in peace talks looking across the table saying your defeat won't be a bad thing. Look,
are you serious?
I'm totally serious. Like, what happened to a diplomat? I mean, look at this.
Really a change in the society, and there are many different nations right now, part of Russia as well. I think if you would have a more like small nations, it's not a bad thing if the big power is actually much smaller. So
imagine Putin comes out and says, I'm really looking forward to the defeat of Europe. But when you look at it, it's actually a collection of much smaller countries. And it wouldn't be a bad thing if those all broke apart and the European Union was dissolved and it was just down to smaller.
That power was much smaller.
More provincial, smaller things. And we could get handbags from Italy and cars from Germany. That would be great for us. We think that would be really good.
Numbody would stand for that. Can you minimize that screen?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is nuts. That
is kind of nuts.
This is really, really nuts. Yeah.
What do we got here?
Clown. Yeah. And this is a possibility too.
That Europe will fall under Sharia law in like a decade anyway, so white liberal women will be no more. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. And by the way, our values include this.
Ukraine also has Nazis, Banderite Azov guys, NATO's values. Wow.
Yeah. So at any rate, this is pretty bad. But let's listen in now, if we could, just very quickly to close out this section. What does the EU consider to be the most important? This is Ursula von der Leyen. Six geese a laying. Lies. Anyway, this is what's most important. I love the white roses, and she's got the white, pure background
so
in the pure top. It's sparkly. This is very pure. Let's listen to the pure message of what Europe cares about.
We
most.
are here because we all agree that climate change is real, man-made, and it is for all of us to tackle it. The threat of climate change is existential. Year after year, you see the snow line rising even higher up the mountains. You see the melting of the glaciers, but you also see the waterline falling even lower. And even if some countries have...
What water line?
What is she talking about?
We're not clear. We don't know.
That didn't make sense. The glaciers melting and the water line falling lower.
Decided to look away. The protection of our nature must continue to be at the top of our global agenda. And we are helping Central Asia's farmers to adapt to a drier climate, using technology to save water and to monitor its usage.
To monitor its usage. That was said with glee.
No free water rights for you.
No. What do you think? Water's free? It's a right? What do you think? And we're helping farmers in Central Asia.
I know. That sounds like
Monitor
their
their water.
USAID. So, doesn't it? It's like their own NGO runaway,
I submit to you
money
that,
pit.
that Europe has more immediate, more pressing concerns than climate change. But it's so what's insane to me about this, Evie, is that when you look at let's imagine you think climate change is the thing, it's the existential crisis of our times, and it's created by CO2. And then you pull up a chart and you say, who's creating CO2? And it's China, right? But she's not saying we have to now go to war with China because they're like selling us cheap stuff.
And they're creating this existential threat to our existence because they're causing climate change.
They're going to smash down on UK pensioners living in flats, making them like Canada
and
have to pay.
Farts.
Have you seen the carbon tax in Canada, right? Just people like ordinary people, like it lives in a hydrocarbon rich country and like, oh, well, you're going to have to pay 50% more. And you pay that money to the government to fight climate change. And you know what the government does with that? It hires more people to regulate you with that money. It has nothing to do with climate change.
I know.
It has nothing, because if you cared about it, you would just look at the chart of who's making the most carbon.
That's right.
And you'd say, oh, it's China.
Oh, it's China. Or, are all of our insects, the web of insects collapsing and all this other stuff? Let's get stuff like neonicotinoids off the shelves. Let's regulate that. I'd be okay with them regulating that.
Yeah.
Good grief. Yeah, to be fair to anybody listening, Chris and I are actually both environmentalists in our own way. We love nature very much and we love the natural world, and we certainly want to see it remain something that can support, all the wonderful creatures that it currently has. But we're not interested in having it shoved down our throats with this propaganda, which really has nothing to do with helping the earth and sustaining anything.
Because we're worried about the biosphere, we immediately have to get rid of all herbicides and pesticides, and we'll just start farming naturally and regeneratively. I'd be like, okay, let's do that. It's gonna be a little hard for a minute, but we'll figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, Homo sapiens, the next kind, says that
Ursula alpha male.
So we did find an alpha male finally in Europe, so that's cool. So just to balance out the German guy,
Homo sapiens, the next kind.
But I think Kevin Oculus is the Oculus has it right. Please.
He says, "Oh my God, if I lived there, I would run for any other country." Logan's runtime.
Get out.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's I would go for that too.
If we lived there, would you leave right now?
I would seriously consider it. Yeah, I would.
Yeah. I'd be scared with all the things going on.
Yep. All right. Well, whole chunk of stuff we didn't get to, but we got to turn now to part 2 of Signal Hour. So for everybody who's been here with us, thank you so much for being here on the public side. If you want to follow us, we're going to carry on the show at Peak Prosperity. And we got to talk about, oh my goodness.
And you can support the work that we're doing by becoming a member. So that's why we do that. We also have to have a place to be able to talk about this behind a paywall, because it's safe to actually have free and open discussions about what needs to be said.
Indeed. There's nothing more important than having context and talking about what's actually truly going on. So that's what we're going to be talking about this. And this is where we, it's this is where we have to wrestle ideas out of the ether, as it were, right? So we got some really big ideas here. I'm a little worried about what's coming next for a variety of reasons, because again, this isn't a prediction of the future. It's just a trend extrapolation. You can clearly see that the devolution of European diplomacy. You can clearly see the devolution and the fracturing of international relations at this point in time. Those are dangerous moments anyway, but you can see it within the countries too. Dangerous polarization, dangerous fracturings,
That's right. That they're promoting with their propaganda and their news, which is BS.
Yep.
Man, I do this a lot lately, but everything seems to need air quotes these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge question. Can our societal fractures be repaired, or does it end in civil war? And that's what we're going to go talk about.
Absolutely. So
join us.
Thank you, everybody else, for being here on the public side. If you're here on Twitter, YouTube, again, thank you for being here. Thanks for the comments. And now